The Soul Thief by the Confused Camper. Evelyn Blackwood was a woman who moved through life like a shadow. There was something about her, something sinister, yet her beauty and charm concealed the darkness that festered deep inside. In her eyes, there was a gleam, a cruel knowing that no one could explain, and most didn't even try. People were drawn to her, captivated by her calm, confident demeanor. But it was never love they felt for her. It was something else, something dangerous. Evelyn had a secret so vile it could never be uncovered, because if it was, there would be no escape. Her heart, the organ that kept her alive, was not like anyone else's. It was black, saturated with hatred, greed, and an insatiable hunger for souls. It wasn't that she wanted power or wealth. No, Evelyn craved something deeper. She craved the essence of people, their life force, their very souls, and she was willing to do anything to steal them. In the quiet town of Harrow's End, people began disappearing without a trace. At first, the townsfolk thought it was simply a string of misfortunes, runaways, accidents, and other trivial explanations. But over time, the disappearances became harder to ignore. People went to bed one night, only to never be seen again, and those who did remain became hollow, vacant shells of who they once were. Evelyn had lived in Harrow's End for as long as anyone could remember, though few knew much about her past. She was a woman of few words, living alone in a grand, dilapidated house on the outskirts of town. Her beauty was the talk of the village, and her charms ensnared every man and woman who crossed her path. She always had company, always someone by her side, laughing, drinking, sharing stories in the warmth of her home. But after they left her, those who had been closest to her were never quite the same. Some became ill, others grew weak and frail, and some simply disappeared into the night. There was one man, Thomas Harris, a quiet but intelligent scholar who began to notice the patterns. He was an outsider, someone who had recently moved to Harrow's End in search of answers to questions that had plagued him for years. The disappearances intrigued him, but it was Evelyn's name that kept surfacing in his research. A name that, strangely, was linked to almost every missing person in town. One evening, Thomas couldn't resist any longer. He ventured to Evelyn's house, a grand mansion that loomed like a tomb in the moonlight, its windows blacked out, casting eerie shadows on the lawn. He had to know the truth. He had to understand why so many had vanished after spending time with her. Evelyn answered the door with her usual warm smile, her eyes glowing in the dim light. "Thomas," she said softly, "I was wondering when you would come by." Her voice was smooth, almost hypnotic, and for a moment, Thomas forgot why he had come. Her presence made everything else fade into the background, like the sound of an approaching storm that couldn't be heard until it was too late. Thomas stammered, suddenly unsure. "I was curious. About the people who've been disappearing. I think I found a connection to you." Evelyn raised an eyebrow, her smile never faltering. "Me? Oh, Thomas, you're mistaken. I've lived here for years. I'm just a woman who enjoys the company of friends. Nothing more." But Thomas wasn't fooled. He stepped inside, despite the gnawing dread that coiled in his stomach. He needed answers, and he needed them now. As the door closed behind him, Evelyn's smile widened, though it held no warmth. The room felt colder, darker, as if the air itself was sucking the life from his lungs. "I've been watching you, Thomas," Evelyn purred. "You're so clever, so perceptive. But some things are better left undiscovered." As she spoke, Thomas noticed something strange about her, something even more unsettling than the cold in the air. There was a subtle rhythmic beat that echoed faintly in the room, like the ticking of a clock. but it wasn't the sound of time passing. It was the sound of something else. His gaze fell on her chest, and in that moment, he saw it. The faint, unnatural movement beneath her skin. Her heart. It wasn't beating like a normal heart. No, it was still, black, cold, and beating with an unnatural pulse. Thomas's breath caught in his throat as he realized the terrible truth. Her heart wasn't just black, it was dead, and with it, everything she touched was dying as well. "You've been stealing their souls," Thomas whispered, horrified. Evelyn's eyes gleamed. "Yes," she said softly, almost lovingly. "Their souls are so delicious, so pure. I only take what they no longer need, what they willingly give. They think they're in love with me, but it's not love. It's something far more selfish." She stepped closer to him, her voice low, filled with hunger. "You see, Thomas, I don't need their bodies. Their flesh is nothing. I take their souls, their essence. With each soul I steal, I grow stronger, more powerful. My heart, once black, is now full of life, stolen life." Thomas stumbled backward, trying to escape the magnetism of her voice, but the room seemed to close in on him. He could feel the coldness radiating from her, a cold that gnawed at his bones. "Why?" he gasped, struggling to comprehend the monstrosity she had become. "Because," Evelyn said, her voice becoming a whisper, "it's the only thing that can fill the void inside me. Souls are what keep me alive. They make me feel alive." In that moment, Thomas knew there was no escaping. She would take his soul, just like she had taken so many before him. She was a predator, a silent thief of life, and now he was her prey. As her hands reached for him, he felt a sudden surge of panic. But it was too late. The darkness closed in around him, and he felt the sharp, freezing chill of her touch as she stole his soul, leaving him hollow and empty. His body crumpled to the floor, nothing but an empty shell, as Evelyn stood over him, her heart pulsing, full of stolen life. She whispered, "Your soul was exquisite." And with that, Evelyn Blackwood turned and walked away, leaving behind another empty husk, another soul lost to her hunger. Thanks for watching, and please hit the like and subscribe buttons for more stories.